Are you looking for a tent and tarp combo that's versatile, easy to set up, and aesthetically beautiful? Well, stick around. I'll tell you why the snowpeak land nest might be a good fit for you. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Before we start, I want to give a big shout out to Homebread for sending me the land nest to create content like this for you guys. Give them a visit at homebread.com, or if you're local in Covina, California, you can give their store a visit. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram for discounts on snowpeak products. Let's start out by talking the basic feature of the snowpeak land nest. The land nest could be used as a shelter, a 4-person tent, or a 2-person tent. To use it as a shelter, you just use it by itself, and if you want it to be a tent, there's an inner tent that you can insert for either a 4-person or a 2-person. It comes with the 4-person inner tent. However, if you want to go solo camping, you can get the 2-person inner tent sold separately. The shape of the land nest is a tube tent style shape. This is very similar to the amenity dome and the vault tent shape, but the big difference is that you can use the land nest purely as a shelter on its own, unlike the amenity dome and the vault tent. Let's take a closer look at the land nest. The land nest is really simple to set up. It only requires 3 poles here, here, and over there. You can open the land nest in the front and the back. There's also a mesh area right here that allows you to have ventilation for airflow inside the shelter or tent. There are rings on the land nest for you to tie down guy lines, but I usually don't tie down guy lines unless it's really windy. The land nest holds up pretty well in no wind or light wind conditions, even without guy lines. The only thing that I wish the land nest has is a rain slide. This will really help because I'm in the Pacific Northwest and it rains all the time. As you can see here, I have the land nest set up with the tarp and a 4-person inner tent that comes with it. Because of this setup, I have to roll up the front flap of the land nest to make room for the tarp. I also have to roll the side flap of the land nest, and because I roll up the side flap of the land nest, I need guy lines right here to keep the tension of pulling this pull forward. Otherwise, this pull right here will collapse backward. You don't have to worry about this at all if you have the side flap stretched out, because the tension will hold this pull forward. Now, just like other tunnel-shaped tents from snowpeak, the land nest is not a tent or a shelter that you can stand straight up in. I'm standing outside the land nest, and the entrance of the land nest is about the height of my shoulder, and I'm 5'11". Of course, if I want to get inside, I would have to duck like this, and towards the middle of the land nest, it gets a little bit higher, but still, I can't stand up straight. So if standing up is really important to you, I would suggest you get the snowpeak Alpha Breeze instead. And just like snowpeak's typical quality, the tent fabric is top notch. The outer tent fabric is made so that water will just glide off of it. The inner tent fabric feels soft and is less waterproof. The color is pure white, though it looks great. I have to say that the pure white color gets dirty easily. I'm currently at a campsite that has a lot of dust, and I can already see a lot of dust marking on the inner tent already. Other than this, the inner tent is super easy to set up. I didn't buy the ground sheet and mat set because I wanted to see if the amenity dome ground sheet and mat set will fit. I forgot to bring the ground sheet, so I used an outdoor mat. The amenity dome mat fits the inner tent 90% perfectly. The land nest inner tent is not a rectangular shape, so all I had to do was slightly fold the amenity dome mat to fit the 2 corners that are not rectangular. I highly recommend you get the land nest ground sheet and mat to keep your living space clean and more comfortable. The inner mat is especially important if you have dogs like me. It makes it so much easier for you to clean, so you gotta get it. Now, if you already have a ground sheet and mat set from the amenity dome series, then you can probably use that and you don't have to get a new set. Let's head inside the inner tent to see how spacious it is. I'm currently sitting on the Expat Mega Mat Dual 10, and as you can see here, it takes up most of the space in the inner tent. There's only about a third of the space in the inner tent that's not covered by the mattress. This amount of space is perfect for someone who camps with a partner and maybe have a couple of pets. It's also doable for a family with children under 5 feet. I guess you can squeeze in 4 adults over 5 feet, but it wouldn't be that comfortable at all. There's definitely tons of ventilation as you can open the front, the back, and the side of the inner tent. It really creates a more comfortable living space. Now let's talk about the tarp. The tarp is a hexa tarp, which means that it has 6 points for you to tie down. It's actually quite easy to set up, even for a single person. All you need to do is apply tension and the poles will stand on its own. Even though it's a hexatarp, the shape is different from snowpeak's existing hexatarps. Each point on the hexatarp is not as sharp or not as stretched out. It has a more rectangular shape compared to the other hexatarp that has a more triangular shape. The landnest tarp can very comfortably fit 2 people, but you can adjust it to fit up to 4 people. As you can see from my setup right here, I have the 3-unit IGT set up with the IGT extension for 2 people. It creates quite a comfortable cooking and hangout space under the tarp. There's plenty of room under the tarp for this setup, and I even have room for my storage containers and water station. The tarp did an excellent job in keeping everything under the tarp dry when we ran into some rain this morning. Now, if I were to have more people join me, all I need to do is scoot back the 3-unit IGT and add another IGT extension to expand my living space. That's what I love about snowpeak. It's so modular and you can make changes to adapt to your needs. That's pretty much all the general features of the landnest. But you're probably wondering, why did I get the landnest and tarp as a set? Because the landnest could be used as a shelter on its own. One of the advantages of a tarp is that it's higher, so you can move around under the tarp easily. It's wide open, so it provides shade and cool air for summer camping. However, what it doesn't provide is that it does not provide protection from mosquitoes and other bugs alike. So really, having a flexibility to have a shelter is necessary. If I go to a campsite that has way more mosquitoes than what I'm comfortable with, I can choose to use the landnest as a shelter and stay inside to avoid all the bugs. Having this flexibility is really important to me because I don't always go tent camping. I'll most likely have the landnest and tarp set stored in my Airstream base camp when I go on longer trips. If I'm taking the base camp, I'm not gonna use the landnest as a tent, so my choices are either using the tarp or landnest as a shelter itself. The flexibility of how I can use the landnest and tarp set in different situations is why I love the landnest and tarp set so much. The landnest is not the only snowpeak shelter system that has an inner tent. The snowpeak living shell also has an inner tent, and it also allows you to be able to dock with other types of tent. I'm a pretty big fan of the living shell. I love the way it looks and I love the functionality of the living shell. But I'm still choosing to use the landnest over the living shell for the time being. The main reason why is because the landnest is much simpler to set up. And of course, because of its size, it's more compact. Campsites in Washington are pretty small compared to campsites that I've been in other states. We have a lot of obstacles like trees that gets in the way of camping setup. And also, a lot of the good waterfront camping sites in Washington are quite small. So setting up a large footprint like the living shell might be a problem. With the landnest, I can find a way to squeeze in between trees, no problem. So should you get the landnest if you already have other tents and shelters? Well, it depends. If you don't already have a snowpeak tent or tarp, I highly recommend you get the snowpeak landnest and tarp set. It's a great entry into snowpeak's line of shelter, tent, and tarp for a very reasonable price. You're basically getting a complete tent and tarp setup for under $1,000. This is comparing to standalone shelters that can cost anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. Well, you're probably thinking, what about the combination of the amenity dome or the Alpha Breeze paired with a tarp? You're absolutely right. That does add up to $1,000. However, that combo does not serve as a shelter. You basically don't have the flexibility to have a shelter like the landnest. You can't use the amenity dome or the Alpha Breeze purely as a shelter. So that's why the landnest and tarp set is more value for your money. So with that being said, if you have snowpeak's entry line of tents such as the amenity dome, the Alpha Breeze, and the Vault tent, I highly suggest you switch to the landnest just for its flexibility. Now, if you have snowpeak's pro line of tent and shelters, I would advise you to stick with that and add on to your build. Maybe you can get a tarp to go with your setup. Overall, the landnest and tarp set is perfect for 2 people for a comfortable camping experience. It can be adjusted to fit a small family with kids. And more importantly, it's compact enough for you to squeeze into tighter or smaller campsites. But perhaps the best feature of the landmass is its ability to use purely as a shelter or a tent. I highly suggest you get the landmass and tarp set if you're new to snowpeak, or if you have snowpeak's entry-level tent and shelter. But if you already have snowpeak's pro level of tent and shelter, I highly suggest you stick with that and add on to your build. Let me know what you guys think about the snowpeak landmass and tarp set in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, it would mean a lot to me if you guys click the like and subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.